Hope everyone got some good caffeine and sugar and got your energy back. I have an announcement to make, and it's a little logistical. There's an error on the program. This afternoon, the workshops run until 3:45. Otherwise, they would only be 45 minutes long. They run until 3:45. And also, on your name badges, you've probably deciphered the code. It's not particularly cryptic. It says which workshop you've signed up to. There's a little bit of flexibility there, but it says where you've declared. So, yeah. This morning we have another 3 great speakers, quite different from the earlier session. So we'll have fresh ideas to throw around, and then we'll have a Q&A, and then there's a little surprise afterwards. So without delaying us, I'm going to get us started with Keith Logan, who is from Capgemini. And Keith has such an interesting role because he's coming in this corporate space from a corporate background, but is really trying to inject different thinking. He's trying to industrialize imagination, which is just, wow. What an effort to do that. So we're going to hear from him about a dream of his, which is to be a chief sci-fi officer, which I think I could agree that sounds like a great thing to be. So I want to hear more about it. We'll hand over to Keith. Please welcome him.
Okay, I feel I must defend corporate Australia from the brutal onslaught of the previous talks. My title, my job at Capgemini, I am Head of Innovation and Collaboration, which means I also run the Innovation Lab. I can't do it. I can't do it. This is the most imaginative I've ever been, wearing this jacket. As Eddie talking earlier on, that is the opposite of me. I am corporate. I am pure corporate. But I don't want to be corporate. That's just not me. So I quit. I'm not doing it anymore. I resign. So I want to do something else instead. Here's my new business card. Oh, sorry. Here's my new business card. I want to. I'm starting at the bottom. I'll work my way up. But I'm going to be the corporate futurist. That's going to be my thing. And today, actually, I'm hiring. So I'm in the market for a chief science fiction officer. Hey, he's got a hand up already. Well played, sir. I'm in the market for a chief science fiction officer. So I'm going to interview you all today. Extra credit for paying attention. I'll interview you all today, and then I'll make my decision at the end. I'll be in touch. So let me start by saying, I wasn't very good at my job. I was head of innovation and collaboration. I wasn't good, and I'll tell you why not. I had a huge problem. The huge problem was I couldn't define what my job was, because I sat down and said, right, my job is head of innovation. So I'd write a description, and then what I would do is I would write a job of a computer scientist, designer type person. I said, no, that's not me. And I'd rub it out and I'd go, right, innovation, blah, blah, blah. And then I'd write the job description of a culture change person. And then I'd throw that away, and I'd write another one, and it was some nebulous, it's everything and it's nothing, collaboration and innovation, it's everything and nothing. The companies that are innovative don't actually call themselves innovation companies. It's only corporates like myself who go, yes, you're in charge of innovation. And I charge around in LinkedIn going, yeah, head of innovation. What does that mean? Don't know. So I want to do this. But before we get the interview started, I want to run you through a little bit of history. This is the guy you're going to be replacing. This is Eric. Meet Eric. So Eric was born in 1903 in India, as all the best people are. He grew up and went to school at Eton. After Eton, he didn't get the qualifications he needed to go to Oxford or Cambridge, so he joined the police force in India. And he went to India, and he was in charge of an area that had 200,000 people. And this area was essentially an outdoor chemical factory. So there's chemicals everywhere, the pollution was terrible, people had a very unpleasant, you see, I'm talking humans. No. Very unpleasant. And then he came home from India, and then he went to the Spanish Civil War. He was 6'3", he stood up, got shot through the throat. Spanish guy, he's a little smaller, 6'3", shot through the throat. He then went to Paris and lived rough on the streets. He got himself arrested in the north of England on purpose to see what would happen when he was arrested. He joined the Communist Party and the Fascist Party of the UK at the same time. Rather like the Liberal Labour thing from earlier on. Which one's fascist, which one? No. He just was interested in that. He slept rough. During the war, he dug carrots. And during the war, he spent his time wondering why everyone liked the Russians and liked communism, even though they knew they were killing lots of people. Then in 1949, he changed his name to George Orwell, and he wrote 1984. So that's George Orwell. Did anyone know that already? Yeah, you see, it kind of ruins my whole lead-up. His job when he wrote 1984, it's amazing stuff. I'm not going to tell you the BuzzFeed top 25 predictions of the future, because he didn't write predictions. He imagined stuff that is different from predicting things. Now let's compare that with Tiddles. This is Mrs. Tiddles, the prediction kitten. Now let me give you some quotes. In 2003, this guy said, music subscription as a business model is bankrupt. Who said that in 2003? Steve Jobs. Okay. In 2007, 2008, who said the iPhone will have virtually limited market share? Steve Ballmer, right? Who said in 1992 the idea of having a personal communication device in your pocket is a pipe dream driven by greed? The head of Intel processors. Who said computers of the future could weigh as little as 1.5 tons? Thomas Watson. Ring any bells, the name Thomas Watson? Invented IBM. So these guys are giants in the field of these things, but their predictions were garbage. A lot of stuff they did really well, obviously, but the predictions are terrible. That's not what they're supposed to do. So, Mrs. Tiddles, now let's talk. Now these are the guys who know all about it. Let's talk about other people who try to design the future. Governments, a fairly spotty record. Management consultants. Management consultants' job is to be, you see a wave. Does anyone surf? You surf. You see a wave. A management consultant is the person who goes, I saw that wave first. Get out of the way. I don't want to go in the wave. They're always just behind the wave looking for the next thing. So everyone talks about innovation labs, innovation centres, and then a little bit later the consultants go, yeah, we'll do that, we'll do that. Deloitte, Capgemini, Ernst & Young, I don't care who it is, but we're all really good at reformatting, reprocessing what someone else has already had the idea about. Now, that's not a bad thing. It's about taking it to the mass market. We are just essentially the Sherpas of taking ideas into the mass market. And if you're willing to pay us for it, bonza, that's how I can afford cool jackets like this. Right, it's time to start the interview. Star Trek. Thank you very much to the Dean for teeing me up beautifully this morning. Now, this is the USS Melbourne. It's like the USS Sydney, only it's a little bit cheaper and isn't as pretty. Nailed it. Get that on film. I'm going to take a pause. Can you cut in some extra? Never mind. Now, let's talk about Star Trek. How do you write Star Trek? How did the guy that wrote Star Trek? He starts with a blank piece of paper, and he goes, space, and then he has another drink, yeah. Final frontier, yeah. Loving it. Right, we're out in space. We're going to go for a journey all around space. Journey all around through space. Right, food. We need to take food with us. Yeah, no, that's hard. Replicator, that'll do the trick. Replicator, lovely. Right, we want to go to different planets, but that'll be really expensive to film getting to other planets. Hologram, that's the horse. Not hologram, what's it called? Teleport, what's it called? The whole holodeck thing. The idea is you come up with the use case for it. You don't come up with the technology. You live in a world that you don't have any constraints or ideas. You just kind of push through the ideas that you want to, based on people, based on stories, based on ideas. Extend the Star Trek thing. I'm going to do it. This is what happens when there's a crisis in Star Trek. The Scottish guy goes, Captain, we don't have the power. Engine 1 is exploded. There's dilithium crystals flying through space. We've got hull breach in levels 4, 12, 92, 6. There's stuff flying around. The warp core's operating at 110% capacity. We need to do something. And Captain Kirk says, Spock. And Spock goes, doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo. That's all sorted there, Captain. Hull breach has stopped. I've just changed shields to the forward position. Nobody knows how to do anything. They just type some buttons. Scotty's job is to go, oh, she can't take the power, Captain. Bonesy's job is to go, Yeah, that's not good. Yeah, it says here that that's not good. No one actually does anything. They're entirely enabled by technology, by machines. In order to talk to someone, you go, ship. It's captain speaking. Here's the question. Why are there so many people in the ship? Why is the ship so big? You don't need all that space. What's essentially happening is there's 400 floors of people at the holodeck going, party on, man. Whilst 6 people are up in the deck doing all the work, pushing the buttons. Okay, Klingons, push that button, push this button. That's what happens. Now, I'm getting somewhere with this, I promise. The thing about it is, everyone imagines the future based on their perception of the future. So has anyone seen the pictures in the 50s of a future mailman? So the mailman is there, he's got a suit and tie on, he's got his hat on, he's got the gear on. And he goes to a house and he hands a letter to a lady. So the lady, she's just back from the kitchen, so she's doing one of those things with a skirt on, takes the letter. Now the only difference is he's got a jetpack on. So he's handing out letters. He's doing it exactly the same way. He's just wearing a jetpack. So people, and it's wonderful, look at all these pictures, it's great. They've got a digital library where you go in and the library's massive. They've just got loads and loads of discs around the room. The idea is you design the future, you imagine the future based on your current perception of what the future's going to be. Even Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs goes, I don't like music subscription. Now what's the one area where Apple doesn't kill everyone else? It's music subscription. He didn't believe in it. His perception of the future was that that's not going to be a thing. So you do it. Sci-fi writers don't do that. They take the stories and they run the stories through. Make sense? Right, here comes the interview. What I'm looking for is someone, therefore, who can start with the story and ignore constraints. If you had 0 constraints, what would you produce? So you talk about the story, you talk about the people, you talk about what it means. So that's point number 1. Who's with me? Anyone up to this? Anyone up to the challenge? All right, next. This is Derek. This is point number 2. This is Derek, the self-driving car. Now, Derek's my friend. So in the future, what's going to happen is Derek's going to pick me up at home. I'm going to jump in. And because the traffic will be so good, I'm going to go to the gym first. So I'm going to go to the gym. Do my gym thing, and then we'll have a bacon roll. He'll take me to the best bacon roll place. Then he'll drop me off at work, and he knows I've got a meeting at University of Sydney, so he's going to bring me to University of Sydney, and then he's going to take me somewhere else, and he's going to go over here. Then I'm going out to the pub, and he'll take me back, and he'll take me back home. Awesome, utopian. Now, you spoke about utopia or dystopia. The reason why you have utopia and dystopia is because it's a better story. And if you look at the future today based on the past, is a combination of utopia and dystopia. So what you do is, you want to be a chief sci-fi officer, you pick utopia, like Star Trek. Everyone can kiss everybody. So it's the first interracial kiss on television because there was no social constraints, because you were based on nothing. And there was a bit of a stooshy about it, stooshy being a Scottish word, meaning problem. But there wasn't a problem, really, because you imagined it. Now, that's the utopian world. However, this is Kenneth. Kenneth is not, this is the dystopian world. Now, Kenneth picks me up in the morning and I get in, and Kenneth goes, morning, fat boy. You're going to the gym. So he drives me to the gym, I get out. So I decide, nah, I'm going to sit in the spa. Yeah, sit in the spa. And then I go back in the car, and Kenneth goes, yeah, I've detected that your heart rate hasn't operated above 150 beats per minute. Therefore, get back in the gym, fat boy, do it properly, come back out. Right? So I come back out, suitably chastised by Kevin, the evil automated car. I then jump in the car. I don't know where I'm going. Kenneth takes me to the ATO because I haven't paid my bill. I get kicked out of the ATO, and someone's waiting for me to say, you, bill, now. So I fill in my bill. He takes me to the interviews. He takes me to the work I have to do based on my boss over here, who programs Kenneth to tell me where to go. There's virtually no difference between what's happening with Kenneth and what's happening with my pal Derek. But one of them's dystopian, one of them's utopian. The idea is, if you have that mindset of thinking about it, the future world is a combination of Derek and Kenneth. Right, point number 2, you have to be able to think utopian or dystopian. Right, third thing, Einstein. Einstein's got my favorite quote of all time, which is, if at first the idea is not absurd, there's no hope for it. Now, what that means is, you won't believe the amount of incredible stuff that's come from accident or come from craziness. Now, I'm going to tell you one story, which I stole this from someone, but he probably stole it from someone else. So it's John Mulcahy from Rio Tinto I stole it from. Now, if you're from Capgemini, you've heard this 10 times, but I don't care, I'm going to do it again. So a group of people sat together, probably in the pub, and they said, right, we've got a problem. And the problem we've got is, in northern Canada, we've got mines, and they're quite far away from centres of population. So what is the problem with northern Canada? It's cold, it's freezing cold. And I don't mean cold in an Australian sense, I mean cold in an actual sense. Now, mines take huge amounts of power, so the power needs to go from here all the way over there. So you're in the Yukon, I'm in Toronto, Yukon, Toronto, Yukon, power lines. Trouble is though, when it gets cold, there's a period of the year where it gets a bit warmer, and you get ice becoming water, and then it refreezes, which becomes heavier, which means the power lines come down. So someone in the pub said, right people, I want to solve this problem. What do we have in northern Canada that can fix this problem? So what is there in northern Canada? Lots of snow. What else is there? Moose. What else is there? Mounties. There's not mounties. What, sorry? Trees, lots of trees. There's bears in the trees. So there's lots of bears. Yeah, bears. Well, moose, bears. So someone went, right, we'll get the bears to take the ice off the power lines. Tremendous, right. So the bear goes up the thing, and then it goes like that, and then the ice falls off, job done. Oh no, there's a problem there. There's an issue. We need to get the bears up the power lines. So how do we get the bears up the power lines? How do we get the bears up the power lines? Fish, honey, food. So let's take honey. We need to get honey in the power lines. Okay, honey in the power lines, excellent, right. So someone will go up the power line with a brush and honey, and then the bears will come and problem solved. Ooh, hang on, how do we get the honey on the power lines? Someone goes, I know, helicopter. So we'll get you, it's your idea, the honey. So you'll jump in the helicopter, you'll hang off the end with your honey, and you go like that on the power line. And someone went, well, you can't do that, because as soon as you get off a helicopter, you get wake from the helicopter, which buffets you around, which makes it really hard to paint the honey in the lines. And then someone goes, how much wake do you get from a helicopter? Well, you get quite a lot of wake, enough to shake ice off the lines. That's the idea. And you put your drink down, and you take a big Chinook, big massive helicopter, you fly over the top of the line, and the ice comes off the line. You don't get to that unless you've done an Einstein-esque absurd idea to start with. Now, who's with me? Who wants to apply for my job? We've got the three things. We've got the ability to tell a story without constraints. We've got this notion of utopia and dystopia, and we need to be mad. Who do we have? Who wants to sign up for my job? How much of it? Dynamite segue, thank you for that. Okay, from a corporate perspective, how does this fit into a corporate perspective? Now, let me show you this, obviously. Now, innovation or ideas. Let me split it into three jobs. It's not one job. Has anyone seen Moneyball? There's a great scene in Moneyball where they say, we've lost our best player. But we can't replace our best player with one player. We're going to replace him with three players. So my view of imagination and innovation is you have to have three players, not just one player. So it's like a building site. You need an architect. And the architect's job is to go, ooh, flames, and yeah, we'll have this comes out here, and we'll have that, and it'll look good. And then that gets passed down the line, and the builder takes it, and he does stuff with it. So two jobs there. You need an ideas architect, or a chief science fiction officer. And that's about ideas, it's about taking madness, it's about processing things as they come through. And then you need the builder, who is great with constraints. Now, most of the innovation in history has not come from the wild stuff. A lot of it's come from, we don't have much. If you look at some of the poorest countries in the world in history, they've actually created the most stuff. Now, I say that as a Scottish person. There's a period of 200 years where Scotland invented everything. Now, I would say that, but look it up, I'm right. It's amazing. And that wasn't because Scotland had loads of money to do it. It's not as if the government gave them a ton of cash to think about it. It's because there was universal education in Scotland, and because we had no money, we had to come up with things. So they came up with stuff. You need people who are good at building things, building innovation, and you want to give them constraints. You want to give them $50 and a bag of crisps and say, go away and innovate stuff and do things. That is not the same as the guy who's coming up, or the woman, excuse me, who's coming up with lots of great ideas. It's the combination of the two things. Now, there's a block in the middle. The block in the middle are the tradies. People with a very specific set of skills who you want to do things. Now, consultants mostly fall into this box, and there's an easy way to spot the tradies, because you might be these people, and that's okay, I'm one of them. Does anyone go on LinkedIn and see people who just share things? So they'll read something in HBR and they'll go, share. Now, are they doing that so they're creating a sense that they know the thing that they've shared? If you just share something, you're providing no insight. You're just providing a link to something, and that's fair enough. But we're all digital people now. We can access all this information ourselves. I know some people who've never written anything on LinkedIn ever of any value. They've just shared everything, shared everything. Consultants are the worst at that. Now, I'm going to say something controversial, so could you edit this part out so I don't get lynched? Yeah, he's not nodding his, okay, fine. Design thinking. Does everyone know design thinking? We've kind of ruined it, consultants. We've kind of wrecked it. And I tell you why. It's because if you're a consultant, you're just dying to put a process, to put a box, to put a framework around everything. And there's lots of great TED Talks about why, what, and how. We spend most of our time doing the what part and not the how part. So the training is what. So I can give you a design thinking training session in 15 seconds. Do some empathy research, come up with some ideas, prototype some of the ideas, build some of those ideas, roll them out. You actually don't need any more information than that to understand what design thinking is. The information you need is, how do you have an idea? How do you approach something? What does it mean? When you do an empathy interview, what's good ethnographics? What's a good way to talk to someone? What's a good way to understand it? And the trouble with corporate, now, there's one consultancy who've decided to train their entire business in design thinking by doing a 1-hour online course. I have to take deep breaths and sit down when I read stuff like that, because you're teaching people nothing. So I'm not sure where you're all from, but if you rely on corporates or consultants to tell you what to do, that's of zero value. It's looking at how you do it and why you do it. That's the block in the middle. So what you're looking for is people who are ideas people, the chief science fiction officer. You're looking for people who are the innovation builders, who can build something, create something. And for the tradies in the middle, with a special set of skills, that's where the world's going. You need to be specialized in an area and you push it through. So from a corporate perspective, one of those jobs needs to be the one. Now, from my perspective, I want to be the chief science fiction officer, but not in this instance, because I'm recruiting today. Right, money. Says it all, thank you very much. This is my own personal corporate hype cycle. Now, has it got a little laser thing? Sweet, look at that. Right, that's the point of the start. That's the, oh, isn't it cool starting point. Now, what happens with lots of corporates is the CEO will read something nice, and they'll go, oh, we need one of those. And then what happens is they put tons of money into it. Let's do that, that'll be fun, that'll be fun, that'll be fun. And it gets to the top, and the CFO goes, show me the money. And they go, oh yeah, whoops. And it comes down here. It's what happens afterwards, which is important. Now, if you imagine this line here as prestige / money, what happens then is either it's something which becomes embedded in the organization, which becomes important. Now, let's take chief customer officer. Chief customer officers are moving away from being just customer into chief operations officers, or the chief transformation officer can be the CEO now. This middle line is, yeah, it's kind of important and we'll do something with it. And this bottom line is, yeah, we'll kind of float around with it. Now, in summary, chief sci-fi officer, what you need is the ability to do what earlier on, work with stories and ideas, remove the constraints, think about dystopia, utopia, and how it fits with the corporate world is kind of doesn't. But you have to push it in. You have to see where it works. You see where it fits. This is how corporate world is changing. Now, we talk about being absurd. This is a real website. I set it up. Real website, real email address, real job title. It's absurd, but I've had a crack at it, and that's what you have to do. So, corporate world, you know, it's changing. These things happen. You want to be a chief sci-fi officer. You want to write a blank piece of paper and say, okay, what's the story? What does it mean? And the people who design it, the people who build it, they all follow. Okay, that's me. I'm getting shouted at to finish. Sorry, Hella. Thank you.
Thank you, Keith. Very inspiring talk. And I bet there's lots of closet sci-fi fans out here. I don't know why it's something we stay in the closet about. I did just say we. I've outed myself. And it'd be really great to hear later a little bit from you as you're chatting about how sci-fi has perhaps informed the future that you've been working towards or the future that you've been trying to avoid. I know that 1984 has been a book that's gained currency again as something that seems a little too resonant with some of the experiences that we have today. So it can guide reflection as well. So very good ideas to continue the discussion.